we journey into the world of pre-built PCs. Some names come to mind such as iBUYPOWER, CYBERPOWERPC, ABS, Skytech, Alienware, HP, Lenovo Origin and a whole lot more. Now one of these companies reached out to us to have us test one of their pre-built PCs. Now who is it? And better yet, how did it fare? You're on the edge of your seat right now. Right? Am I right? Well, enough teasing. Let's find out right now. With the over 200 PCs that I built this year, I liked the idea of doing some testing on a pre-built PC. Well, why Robe? Why would we look at a pre-built? Well, believe it or not everyone wants to build their own PCs. Stop blowing things that need to put that virtual rock down. You could hurt somebody with that now in today's marketplace, with GPUs and even certain components. DDR5 being hard to come by. Well, let's just say a pre-built is still a solid option to get a PC now. iBUYPOWER centers over the SlateMR Mister on paper. It came with some pretty impressive specs for a solid 1440p gaming machine. So let's break it down, shall we? Now before we dive in, let's talk about the unboxing processes. Pre-built VCs have had some sketchy experiences when handled by your local delivery company. You've got the packing and boxing up process, potential Instapack inside the machine, and then there's the UPS or FedEx or any other delivery service. And let's be honest, this could be the real wrench in getting a PC to you intact. Looking around the PC and tech community, we've seen others do reviews on pre-built PCs like Linus and Steve from Gamers Nexus and have had some pretty bad experiences with their PCs showing up in various states of disrepair, broken cases, broken GPUs, you name it. Now let's hope we don't have that same issue with this PC. Now we took the system out of the box, we found no visible issues on the cases. It was packed pretty well. Now the system did come without the GPU installed, but they did give us clear instructions and easy directions on how to install it. It's easy enough to understand if you're buying this PC without any prior experience building a PC. It's like putting toast in a toaster, except for it never pops out, it just toasts forever. Well, on the back of the I/O panel and GPU, there are very clear coverings and markings to show you where you can plug in HDMI cables in for your display. I know many of us it seems like second nature setting up a PC, but you would be surprised how many folks are intimidated by the process. So I really do appreciate the hand-holding. Now looking at the case, the first thing you notice is a sleek looking front. But it is a solid front panel except for like a hole in the middle of it. Now we're not sure if iBUYPOWER is thinking this is enough for airflow. But that's all you're going to get in the front panel. Now for the front panel, you get a power button to USB 3.0 Type A ports and a separate audio jack for both mic and headset. Good call here, except no USB-C. Hey, iBUYPOWER, guess what? The motherboard you did put in here does have a USB-C front panel header on it. So just saying, alright, now that we have our system unboxed and the GPU installed and turned on, let's take a look at the specs of the system they sent us. The CPU they sent us was one of the better CPUs you can buy today. And that was a Core i7-11700K. The motherboard, well, that's a different story. They did send us a Z590. But it's one of those lower-end Z590s, as in the ASRock Z590C/AC. The board does not have an integrated I/O shield. And to be honest, it's kind of ugly, which I understand is subjective. And it doesn't look very thermal friendly, but looks and what it actually does is different. So we'll come back to this in a little bit. The RAM that system came with is made from Team Group. And it's their Geforce 16GB 2x8GB configuration at 3600 MHz RAM, which to our surprise XNP was actually set out of the box, which is a nice touch as it's already running at the full rated speed bonus, and great job for them because many beginning users, which we've kind of hit on before, can find it super intimidating going into the BIOS just to change the setting. Now the GPU that came with this is the Asus TUF Gaming RTX 3060Ti. It's a solid GPU and a well-known brand. The 3060Ti is a great 1440p GPU. And sure to get you the frames you need to play your games. Don't worry, we'll show you all about that near the end. Now for cooling, the system came with a 240mm AL that is top mounted on the case with three 120mm ARGB fans at the front as set to intake and a single 120 ARGB fan in the rear for exhausts. Again, we're just going over the specs of the machine and we will get into the thermals and how it performs in a bit. Now for storage, we have what looks to be a WD Blue SN 551TB NVMe SSD. It's a solid choice here. See what it did there. You also get the option to put another NVMe SSD in the motherboard, which is nice should you want to upgrade your storage at some point. Now the system came pre-installed with Windows 11 the 21H to build, which is great to see, and not a lot of updates you need out of the gate, especially going from Windows 10 to Windows 11 means you're going to be up and gaming faster. And there you have it, all the specs for the iBUYPOWER Slate ICO Mr. System that we have right here. Now let's see how it actually performs. First thing we're going to talk about is thermals. As we have some questions on it, the front panel, the case is a tiny hole in the middle for airflow and the rest seems to be pretty closed off. So we aren't expecting stellar results here at idle, meaning the power in the PC is just on and the PC is just sitting there in an open case environment, which means we strip everything that we can offer. The CPU temp was averaging around 30 degrees Celsius, and it went up to 33. We basically put everything back together, which is no surprise, obviously, as this does restrict airflow, and we have airflow working the way the case intended. Now, our GPA was a little bit different, though, but not by much. Open case averaged around 29. And close case was at 31, a 2-degree difference in temperature. There isn't anything to worry about. And if we did it again, right here, right now, those numbers might be 2 to 3 degrees different than that. So I think the point is be aware of your surroundings, the airflow in the room where the PC is sitting, and even what season it is. And what I mean by that is if you have your PC, let's say for instance, in the basement during the winter, in a city like Detroit, there are two things you would potentially see. Number one, someone trying to break in and take it because you're in Detroit. And number two, it's colder in the basement, and in the winter, so the ambient temperature in the room will be colder than it would be in the summer. Point is, we test ours, we have a standard setting for our ambient etc., so that's where we get our numbers. Now when we put the CPU under stress using ATA 64 for half an hour at 100% CPU usage, I might say we saw some surprisingly good thermals in the case. The open case scenario, we saw an average of 63 degrees Celsius during the test. In the closed case scenario, the CPU only jumped up to 70. Now that is really impressive for a pre-built system with a mostly closed-off front panel. And lean does this say we were actually impressed. The auto is doing a solid job of cooling it, also it's getting the air it needs to, which is all you can really ask for. Is it for our GPU? We ran the Unigine benchmarks for Heaven's Superposition and Valley, and under our load with our open case, the GPU average was 56 degrees Celsius. Yes, I said 56 and only 59 in the closed case scenario. So far, I gotta hand it to iBUYPOWER in the systems. The thermals have been outstanding for us in both open case and closed case scenarios. Unlike that MSI Aegis desktop in which our GPU temps were at 73 in the open case, and 81 in the closed case, and our CPU temps hit 100 degrees Celsius before the system actually throttled. Okay. Thermals. Sure, Murmaz Roby? That sounds right, yeah, give me gaming. Wow. Alright, let's jump in. First, let's talk about games tested and how we test them. Let's run down the single player's games list first, and then we'll jump into multiplayer games. So first on the list, it was Shadow the Tomb Raider. This is a popular benchmark as it has a benchmark built in with a lot of useful information, which makes it much easier to compare results. We ran this benchmark with RTX DLSS on at the highest preset, and 1440p for 3 runs. And it came to an average of 172 frames per second with our 3060Ti in the system. Next up is Metro Exodus running at 1440p with the benchmark set to extreme, ray tracing set to high, and DLSS set to balance. We saw an average frame rate of 64 fps at 51440p with ultra high graphics setting. We saw an average of 86 fps. And if you haven't played Dirt 5 yet, you actually are missing out. You actually really should get this game, especially given it's on Xbox Game Pass or PC Game Pass. So if you have those, go give it a shot. Last single-player game we tested was Borderlands 3 with maximum graphics settings at 1440p. We got an average of 66 frames per second. Again, given the single-player nature, this could be more than fine, but if you want to get higher frames per second, you may want to lower some of those settings. As you can see, all of our single-player games were above the coveted 60 FPS, and some just blew it out of the water like Shadow the Tomb Raider. Now, while single-player games are great for passing the time during your casual gaming sessions, it's time to talk multiplayer games. Here are the games we tested, and all the games were at 1440p with the lowest visual settings to optimize for the highest possible frame rates. First up, Apex Legends during our 3 runs saw an average of 216 FPS. Next up is Battlefield 2042. We saw 129 frames per second for our 3 runs. What's more there to say that I'm not really a fan of the game, but it's popular so we wanted to make sure that we had it in here and tested given those figures. Next up was talking about Call of Duty Warzone. We ran the game an average of 3 times and got 171 frames per second. Now this game is not very optimized for any system you throw at it, so it is possible that if you have a 3060 Ti you could get higher or lower frames, and this heck with any game that we test, that is always a possibility. Finally, everyone's favorite mosh pit of the mosh pit in gaming, Fortnite. For all you sweaty Fortnite players that are out there, name Silver Sleek or Fatal Storm, you'll be happy to know that you're going to get a whopping 346 frames per second on Fortnite with our settings. Again, Fortnite will run on a Chromebook okay, not very well, but it feels that way. So it's no surprise that we got that high, but dang, 346 frames per second is still actually pretty impressive on a 3060 Ti, given that we only saw 494 frames per second on a 3080 Ti. Well anyway guys, there you have it. The iBUYPOWER Slate Paco. We talked about thermals and they were really great thermals, I might add. We talked about single-player games and their frames per second. We talked about multiplayer games and their frames per second. Now the question is, do we recommend that PC? Now before we answer that, I'm going to answer the question I get all the time. Do we recommend pre-built systems? In general? The answer is yes, we absolutely recommend pre-built systems with a couple of stipulations. Those stipulations are: number 1, buy your brand from like unknown brand, like iBUYPOWER. Buy it for a reputable company like Newegg, or Best Buy, or the actual company themselves, like Origin, etc. Now make sure your specs match up with what it would cost to build the system, and then add $100 to $300. Depending on the parts, if the system you can build yourself is $2,000, and the pre-built of the same parts is $4,000, then no, it's probably a bad deal. Math is actually important here, folks. In fact, let's individually price out this PC to see where it would end up if we built it ourselves. So let's look at the CPU, an Intel Core i7-11700K. It sells for $350. Over on Newegg for the motherboard. It's an ASRock Z590C. It's so cheap that really no one kind of sells this, but we did find one used on Amazon for $300. So we're just going to call this $150 new, given somebody's just having a go. I guess for the RAM we're going to use the Team T-Force T Group $3,600 kit. That sells for $36 over at Newegg. For storage we're looking at the SANT 551TB NVMe SSD, and that sells for about $100 on both Amazon and Newegg. The GPU is the Asus TUF Gaming RTX 3060 Ti. If you can find this at its current MSRP, it goes for about $630, which we might find at Best Buy or even on the newest shuffle case we have here as a custom case for my iBUYPOWER, but we match it with like something similar, which would be like a P400A from Fantex. And for the size purposes, and that retails for around $75. Now if we went with our recommendation on the PSU, which we think is smarter, giving you 750 watts, we'd be looking at about $105, which we would recommend the AVGA Supernova G5. Finally, the CPU cooler is a 240mm cooler that came with it. So if we bought a good cooler as well to under 40mm, we'd go with the MSI 240R, which retails for around $100. So the total price of the build if we built it ourselves and come to around 1,600 rupees are right at $1,171. Okay, so $1,600 doesn't tell the complete story. When you think about building this yourself, you may want to also add some additional funding just to say to be fair for things like tools, for things like shipping, etc., which may bring this bill closer to $2,000. Should you want to build it yourself? And to be frank, let's be clear. Finding a GPU is going to be the hardest part of all this, as everything else is kind of regularly in stock at Newegg or Amazon. Now on to this PC. Do you recommend this one, Roby? Well, given the price is $1,749, the GPU market the way it is, and the way the system performs, this is kind of a no-brainer. If this is something you want to buy, there are only two things that I have issues with this PC. I mentioned number 1, USB-C front I/O port, and the motherboard actually having the USB-C front port and not being able to use it kinda lame. Number 2, the motherboard they used is rather cheap, and it has no Wi-Fi 6. Other than that, I would see no reason, given our testing and benchmarks, why one wouldn't really want to pick up the system if you had your eye on it. Now this is of course caveat on the fact that this is an 11th gen versus a 12th gen, and those are starting to release, but the prices on those are going to be higher. And again, still a good price given what you have from a component standpoint, and the performance. I mean, you saw the numbers yourself, but it's not about what I think, it's about what you think. Were you surprised by our results? I mean, Given how much Steve and others have pooped on these things, are you giving iBUYPOWER pre-built a change given our numbers? Are you looking for a pre-built PC of your own? I would love to know all of those things down in the comments below. Now while you're down there, and make sure you slap that subscribe button with that like button and ring that notification bell so you get a notification each and every time we post a new video or go live right here on ViprTech. Do you have a question about this case or any other tech-related questions or PC pre-built questions? Then check out our amazing Discord server filled with other tech and PC enthusiasts who love to share their thoughts and ideas on these very subjects. Looking for cheap tech? And then check out at RubyTechDeals.com or at RubyTechDeals on Twitter, where we have our guy Tom scouring the internet for the best details on all things tech, from PC components to TVs to video games, you name it. Finally, you can also follow me and my team on all the socials at RubyTech pretty much everywhere. We hope you enjoyed this video and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.